And with that, we go to Eric Mangini live in New York, Jets, Browns head coach, Fox Sports. So, it's interesting. Old teams have an advantage early. You're not teaching guys tricks. Old teams can fall apart late. Any of my Niner concerns to you land that you were, because I do think even great teams peak, and I felt like, boy, they're old guys, Kittle, Trent, they're long in the tooth. What say you?
Yeah, a couple of your concerns really hit. The fact that they're an old team, that's real, and that's been statistically proven over time, that the amount of injuries with older teams mount up, and the younger teams, not only do they not get as injured, but they get better as the season goes on, as opposed to getting worse. I would say the Christian McCaffrey concern is real as well. The reason he's in San Francisco is because he couldn't stay healthy in Carolina, and he's been remarkably healthy since he's gotten to San Francisco, but it's hard to imagine that trend's going to continue. Now, that being said, the 49ers over the last decade have been the most injured team in the league. They've had the most guys miss games, but last year was their best year of that decade. They actually finished out of the bottom 10 in the NFL last season. So maybe they're getting a little bit better and figuring some of those things out in terms of keeping the guys healthy. I don't totally agree with the noisy offseason. I get it with Aiyuk. I get it with Trent Williams. But there's always going to be contract disputes, especially if you have the success that they've had. It's not been terrible. Here's the thing that the big question mark and the thing that saves them is if Brock Purdy is the real deal, then they're going to be competitive for a Super Bowl for a long time. And everybody's trying to figure out whether or not the guy that we've seen is a function of the coaching staff and the talent he has, or whether or not he's on that Tom Brady unheralded trajectory that we've seen happen, once in the past.
So the rookie quarterbacks, I thought Drake May was not as impressive, but going into this season, he's not as refined. The Caleb stuff, it's funny. As a coach who knew personnel, you hit on draft picks, you knew them. It doesn't, I always said, I used to watch American Idol. I could tell within 12 seconds, and I don't know anything about music. I'd be like, terrible, lounge singer, wow. I could tell, I don't know music. Is that I watched Caleb Williams make one or two plays, one or two runs, and I was like, yeah, I've seen enough. You can, I get it. And that's my interpretation. Like, you can see magic from a pass rusher, a receiver. I remember Jamar Chase's first game. I'm like, yep, that works. He's good. What did you make of the young quarterbacks? Well, let's start with Caleb Williams.
I would say if I was a Chicago Bears fan, I'd be really excited. I'd be really optimistic. I'm sure season ticket sales have continued to improve, jersey sales, all those things, because you got to see the upside of Caleb Williams. You got to see some of the wild plays, some of the plays that he makes with his feet, some of the off-platform type plays that he's capable of. I like the fact that he slid on his run. I thought that was encouraging as well. There weren't false starts. There weren't quarterback center exchange problems, delay of games. You didn't have the operational stuff. So all those things were really positive. I'm curious, and I've said this over and over again, my concern is that he's going to try to make a play all the time, and that will catch up. That'll catch up to you. The guys are too good in the NFL. They hit harder, they close faster, they anticipate better. So as long as he doesn't have to play hero ball all the time, and will truly understand that it's okay to live to fight another day and throw the ball away and have a long career, that to me is my biggest concern with Caleb, but really optimistic about what you saw in this limited exposure.
So I want to talk about Bo Nix, who, and I've said this, I think Caleb Williams is good enough to overcome maybe a bad coach. He'll still be productive. I think the rest of these guys are situational. I don't think Bo Nix could go to a defensive coach that didn't have a feel or a bad offensive line. I think he and Sean Payton is like, that's where he needed to go. So I was kind of blown away. He made a throw down near the end zone, and I was like, oh, that's a real throw. It's a snap throw, quick. I was impressed with Bo Nix. You're a coach. What did you see?
What I was most impressed by and really most surprised by is the fact that Sean let him throw 21 times.
Yeah.
I mean, you typically don't get a rookie quarterback in his first preseason game throwing the ball that many times, and over the course of the throws that he had to make, he was pretty efficient. He looked in control. There were some times where I thought he left the pocket a little bit earlier than he had to, but Sean obviously went into the game and said, "We're going to take a long look at him, and we're not gonna go in and have him hand off 2 times and then throw a screen pass. We're gonna see what he can do." And I thought he did a really nice job for his first exposure. But in fairness, Zach Wilson, I think, was 7 for 9. So both guys had a pretty good outing for the first exposure. It's going to be interesting to see as we get to this next game, where there's a little bit more game planning, a little bit more variety from the defense, asked a little bit more in terms of what you're giving them offensively, whether or not we see that same level of efficiency.
You know, I read a study years ago about Facebook. You know, people when Facebook came out would go and they'd rekindle with their high school or their college flame. And, you know, people that they'd been out with. And the study said that there's a reason you left somebody and that Facebook made you feel like, oh, I'm back in high school or college. And we do that. We tend to forget the bad. We remember the good times in relationships. And I watched Justin Fields and I'm like, I'm trying to be so optimistic. I really am. And I watched him with Pittsburgh and I'm like, this is why he drove me crazy. He can't handle the snap. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I get that analogy, but I do think some relationships can be more toxic than others. and sometimes if you get out of a bad one and get into a good one, things can look totally different. And this is a really outstanding opportunity for Justin Fields. But it's not all going to get fixed at once. And Justin was sacked 135 times over his first 3 seasons. He averaged 10 picks a year over that time period. And there's some problems that he's got to work through. You saw the upside, and then there's the quarterback center exchange problems where you're just frustrated and you want more from him who's played in a ton of games. But in fairness, we haven't seen Russ either. And he really benefited. He benefited from having the exposure, but he also is getting downgraded because we didn't see how Russ would have done in that same scenario and whether he would have had problems with that same center or not. So let's give him some time. And again, I say have a Justin Fields package every single game, an extensive package, and let him play in addition to having Russell Wilson play.
So I was watching just clips. I didn't get to see it live because I was busy entertaining America on this show. But I was watching.
Well, you weren't busy shampooing your hair, from what I understand. that only happens weekly. Not wasting a lot of time on that.
So be quiet, J Mac. Don't encourage him. So I was watching clips of Aaron on WFAN in New York, real popular morning show. And there was a moment I thought it was so funny. And it was an earnest question. They let a producer ask a question to Aaron Rodgers. I guess he'd been itching to ask Aaron, the franchise quarterback for the Jets, a question. And the producer asked the question, the Malaysian airliner that went down, do you think possibly, and they started going into some internet conspiracy, and I thought, I would be mortified if I went on a popular show and it was labeled essentially as a guy that buys into conspiracy theories. And I just thought, Aaron's become 50% quarterback, 50% podcast guest. And I thought, oh, this is not where you want to be. What do you just make of where he is now?
I was really high on Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, and obviously I went through that experience with Brett Favre going to the Jets when I was there, and I think he can be really good. It's just I'm so frustrated with all the other stuff that he's bringing. And Brett was great when we had him. He was, he was part of the team. He was willing to do whatever we asked him to do.
Yeah.
He wanted to be treated like everybody else. And with Aaron, it's always something. It's It's mandatory minicamp, that's just an OTA. That the preseason games, that's not real football. It's whatever he thinks at the moment is absolutely right and is absolutely the way it should be. And then things can't be as they appear. They have to be some sort of diabolical plot from the deep state to overthrow the government or create world domination. Like I don't get it. I think he's bright. I just don't get why he has to go there. And everybody's entitled to their opinion and their thoughts. I just don't know if this is the most productive thing for them to win football games this year.
I have a theory on that. Never married, no kids, extra time on the phone. The two other conspiracy theorists I think of that I kind of know, never married, no kids. My wife, if I suggested to my wife the Malaysian airliner was a conspiracy, she'd say sleep on the couch or move. So, again, it's when you control your own world and your own narratives and you don't sacrifice. And I know fans say, oh, it doesn't matter. But it's like at some point, this stuff it feels silly. And he's not a silly person. It just feels silly, right?
It does. And he's not a silly person. He obviously is very bright, but also when you're idolized for so long and when you've been elevated because of the things that you've been able to achieve athletically, sometimes we can all get a little bit infatuated with our own ideas and our own thoughts, and it's really healthy to take a step back and listen to what other people have to say and be open to that.
Yeah. By the way, not to get personal, when's the last time you had to sleep on the couch?
Well, I'm away so often that I think that helps.
Yeah. J-Mac's been enjoying this whole thing. Shots at my hair, personal questions. Coach,
I barely recognize you with that new hairdo, Colin.
It's not a new hairdo. It's not a hairdo. It's just the comb work today. That's all it is. You guys are making it sound like
with all that oil in there, it probably just sits differently.
You're making it sound like I had a renaissance in San Tropez over the weekend. The comb moved to the left more than the right. That's the whole thing. Okay.
Well, it looks good on you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.